Going to try this. Golan Dain, is that right? That's my only bit of Icelandic. I think maybe I might try one more word at the end of the presentation. And thank you for inviting me to this symposium. My name is, as Christian has said, is Rachel Hunter. I'm the area manager for the Highlands and Islands Enterprise Shetland office. I've worked in Highlands and Islands Enterprise for nearly 14 years now. I find working in economic development very rewarding. It's, the economy constantly evolves and develops, and there are new opportunities come along all the time. So it's a very dynamic arena to work in. Today, I'm going to take you through my presentation, which will introduce you to the Highlands and Islands of Scotland, and then I'll move on to tell you about the Highlands and Islands Enterprise and the work that we do, and then move on to speak about the air discount scheme, which I think is the main focus of your symposium today. And also really focusing in on what the impact it has had on the people of the more remote and rural areas of Scotland. So I'm sure you're all up on your geography, but I specifically found a map with Iceland in it, because I thought it was really important. I live and I was born and brought up in the Shetland Islands, which you can see, and the airport there is Sombra. The Highlands and Islands of Scotland cover, basically, there's sort of half Scotland's landmass there, and you can see all the different parts of the Highlands and Islands in that map on the right there, and you can see that with all the different local authorities. For those that, in terms of geography, they've got Shetland in the northeast there, you've got the Orkney Islands just lying below Shetland, and on the west you've got the Western Isles, and down in the southwest you've got the Argyll and Bute Peninsula. So, the region that I'm going to speak about, which is highlighted in dark blue here, is the region that my organisation covers, it faces a lot of challenges. The region is remote and on the periphery of the European Union, just for now, not much longer. It is mountainous, there is poor soils, there's a lot of peat bog. The climate can be very challenging, lots of wind, rain, and so on. And in order to meet many parts of the region, or to get to the central belt of Scotland, from the more peripheral and rural areas, you need to undertake water crossings. And these are challenging, particularly in bad weather, which is quite common in the wintertime. Scotland is home to 5 million people, but only 10%, actually less than 10%, live in the Highlands and Islands. And this sparsity of population means that you don't get the economies of scale that you do in other parts of Scotland. So it's very challenging to deliver services and to run businesses and to sustain communities. What we also see in the Highlands and Islands is because of these reduced economies of scale, the cost of living is actually much higher than it would be in a mainland, in a sort of central belt Scotland town. And we have very rigorous research that underpins this by an organisation called the Joseph Rowntree Foundation that surveys the cost of living across Scotland and across the UK. And if you are living in a small island in the north of Shetland, your income needs to be nearly 40% higher. Your average income needs to be 40% higher to achieve the same similar standard of living than somebody living in, say, Glasgow or Edinburgh. So, this graph here shows the population of the Highlands and Islands from 1851 to 2014. And back in the 1850s to the mid-1960s, the Highlands and Islands were in terminal decline. Poverty and famine were very prevalent. There was not very many economic opportunities. People basically migrated out of the Highlands and Islands to find work and prosperity overseas, America, Canada, New Zealand, or they moved to the big cities in England and in Scotland. But a change happened in the 1960s. And from that time, we have seen the population sharply rise in the Highlands and Islands. And in 2017, as I said before, we've got nearly 500,000 people living in the area. Nearly every part of the Highlands and Islands has seen population growth over the past decade. And it's important to say that population is not, every place has a centre. So the Inverness is the capital of the Highlands and Islands, and that has seen rapid growth, but we see population right across the region. So just to give you some facts and figures, Highlands and Islands cover some 15,000 square miles, and it's more than half of Scotland, with a population of just over 465,000. It's now a very thriving and modern economy, and it's seen remarkable progress over the last 50 years. The population has increased by 7.5% since 2001, well above the Scottish average of 4.6%. And as I say, Inverness is one of the fastest growing cities in the UK. The population, the capital, the population grew by 18% from 2001 to 2011 in Inverness, a massive increase in population. Inverness Airport has experienced its longest sustained period of growth in its 77-year history. The number of passengers using the airport have been increasing every year, and in July this year it recorded its highest monthly figure of nearly 93,000 passengers. And this brings in about £75 million to the Highlands and Islands economy. And Inverness has connecting flights with Heathrow, Manchester in England, but also Schiphol in over in Amsterdam, Netherlands, sorry. Yeah. However, in the more peripheral and outlying areas of the Highlands and Islands, challenges very much remain. You know, we've seen a lot of progress, but there's still a lot of work to do. And I suppose the cost of living, which I've already spoken about, fuel poverty is high. Unfortunately, we don't have all this geothermal heating that you have here. I wish we did. So the cost of heating homes is very high because you're tankering in lots of diesel and oil and so on, and electricity tariffs are very high from the mainland. We've got demographic challenges in the most peripheral areas. We've got an ageing population. About 16% of the population in Scotland as a whole is over 65%. It's over 65, sorry. In the Highlands and Islands, 20% of people in the population are aged 65 and over. But in the Western Isles, for example, in the West, which has seen a lot of change in demographic balance, 30% of the population is over 65. And this has led to what we call the brain drain, where especially women, clever young women, tend to go off, get university degrees, and you never see them again from these small populated islands. And for any community or any economy, when you get that imbalance, that is not good for your future. The other issue, because of the economies of scale, there's lack of childcare, which again exacerbates and doesn't promote more women working and living in the area. Until recently, it's getting better, but we've had poor digital connectivity in the area, so we can't help businesses to run digital type businesses in these outlying areas. And what I'm also going to speak about is the poor transport connectivity. So it's not just one challenge, there's a multitude of challenges in these peripheral areas. It's a lot better than it used to be 50 years, most definitely, but there's still a bit of a challenge to go. So I did say that things started to turn around in 1965. In 1965, Highlands and Islands Enterprise was born. And we are, the organisation I work with, the Scottish Government's Economic and Community Development Agency for the north and west of Scotland. And you can see our geography in the colour there. We were formerly called Highlands and Islands Development Board, and were established by an Act of Parliament, the Highlands and Islands Scotland Act 1965. And we were set up to address what they called the Highland problem. Now, the Highland problem is just what I've been articulating to you. It's depopulation, demographic imbalance, lack of enterprise, lack of business opportunities, communities that were literally falling apart. This was reinvented as Highlands and Islands Enterprise in 1990 under the Enterprise and New Towns Act, and we have got an amazing amount of powers. We can, we can invest in businesses, we can own companies, we can compulsory purchase land. We've got a huge amount. There's not a lot that Highlands and Islands Enterprise can't do under these government acts. We're headquartered in Inverness. Hope you can see that there, just right in the middle of the red splodge there. Not a great map, sorry. We've got about 300 staff, and we've got a £67 million annual budget. Now this, as you know, we've had quite a number of years of austerity in the UK, and this has reduced significantly from a few years back, where our budget was about 80 million. But we still, it's more challenging to do what we do, but we've got a fantastic group of people working for Highlands and Islands Enterprise, hugely motivated to do the best for the region. I manage the Shetland office up at the top there. Shetland's got a population of just under 24,000. I've got 10 members of staff who are supporting local businesses and helping to invest in local businesses and communities. Highlands and Islands Enterprise has a policy that whatever you do, in whatever area you work in across the region, you can work from anywhere. And if you're a line manager and you say, no, I want my people to work right in the same area, you have to have a really, really good justification. So in addition to the staff that work for me in Shetland, I also have 2 members of staff in the office in Lerwick that work across the whole region. It's great to see that you can be serving Inverness from Shetland. Very distributed method of working. So in terms of what we do, our vision is for the Highlands and Islands to be a highly successful and competitive region in which increasing numbers of people choose to live, work, study and invest. That is our vision. We just want more people in the region, and we want them economically active. And our purpose is to generate sustainable but inclusive growth across the Highlands and Islands. We don't want just to see growth in the centres, in the major towns. We want to see growth right across the region. We want it to be inclusive. So we deliver our vision by providing advice and financial support to businesses and social enterprises which have aspirations to grow, and also to innovate and export goods and services internationally. We support capital investment in businesses, but more importantly, we invest in human capital, graduate placements, management and leadership development. We've actually got a programme that we run in tandem with the MIT in Boston in America in leadership and development, and general workforce development. We also support community organisations. We're very unique in terms of economic development agencies in that we also have a remit for community development. So in the more remote and fragile areas, we support communities to acquire assets and to generate income from them, and also to ensure that they provide services, to provide services to their communities. We support business sectors which offer the most opportunity for growth, exploiting our natural resources, so for example, renewable energy, forestry, salmon fishing, so on. But we've got a lot of new industries in the Highlands and Islands too. We've got life sciences, which are built around the development of the University of Highlands and Islands, so it's a much more diverse economy than it used to be. And this obviously attracts in more young people. We're also investing in infrastructure to create the conditions for a competitive region. We develop business parks, some very large-scale business parks, and property to help businesses grow. We've invested in super-fast broadband right across the region. And we've also invested, as I said before, in a regional university. If you look around the world, the most competitive regions have very active and functioning universities. Now, just if you want to read more about what we do, the operating plan is there on our website. So there it is there. And I just quickly, just to summarise the sectors that we support, and also highlighting the last bullet point there, that its social and community businesses models are also a real focus of what we do. And most of these, we prioritise funding for social and community business models only in the fragile areas, not in the more central areas of the Highlands and Islands. Over the last 50 years, we've invested in infrastructure to facilitate opportunity and increase quality of life. I mean, when people in Scotland see Highlands and Islands Enterprise, they go, wow, you've invested on all this infrastructure. But our main purpose is to make the Highlands and Islands an attractive place to live. It's about quality of life, it's about drawing people in. And as you can see, some of these large infrastructure projects are not in the centre. We've got Moray in Shetland, which is an arts and creative and cinema venue. We've got Scrabster Harbour investments in the north of Scotland there. We've got European Marine Energy Centre in Orkney and the European Marine Science Park in Argyll down in the southwest of the peninsula. We've also got a massive project at the moment at Inverness, the Inverness campus, where we're developing a business park there which will house life sciences and technology businesses. Okay. In 2015, we undertook a very extensive survey on young people across the Highlands and Islands, and young people that also had a connection with the Highlands and Islands. And it was a very large-scale survey of about 4,500 young people. And what the survey was intended to do was to capture the attitudes in relation to a range of factors, including educational and employment opportunities, housing, transport, digital and mobile connectivity, culture and community. It was also intended to capture their aspirations for the future, identifying key factors that would make the Highlands Islands an attractive place for young people to live, work and study. Now, this particular piece of research has gone very far and wide and is directing our policy going forward. Because again, as I say, what we're trying to do is attract and retain and bring people into the area. So we really want to know what young people thought. And overwhelmingly, most of the young people were very proud of the Highlands and Islands. It was very different from maybe 20 years ago, where it was a place I think just want to get out of. And they certainly don't think that the Highlands and Islands is somewhere that they're very much convinced of what it has to offer as a good place to live. But they do need opportunities to allow them to stay, return or move to the region. And this slide shows us what the young people said with regard to the top 5 factors that would make the region a more attractive place to live, work and study. And as you can see here, we've got high quality jobs, most important, but also opportunities to progress in a career. It's all very well just getting a job, but they actually want to move up the career ladder. And does the Highlands and Islands offer that opportunity? They want good access to housing. They want good access to further and higher education. And in terms of this particular presentation, the 5th most important factor was affordable transport links. So in terms of attracting young people to the Highlands and Islands, this is something that we just can't ignore. And interestingly, in terms of this presentation, the 6th factor was lower cost of living. They recognise that it's an expensive place to stay. So how can we as a government agency and others influence bodies to reduce the cost of living? So again, just to sum up on that and policy implications on young people, there's a lot of issues to be addressed, and that's something we're working on. We have to accept that I did it myself. When I was 18, I left Shetland and went to Glasgow University to study. It's a rite of passage. It's what young people do. But there had to be something to bring me. I wouldn't have gone back to Shetland if I didn't have a job. So you have to think about, it's about not keeping young people in, but it's about letting them go and making sure they come back again. And I think what was great from the study is there's a real definite appetite to live, work and study in the Highlands and Islands. So moving then on to connectivity and affordable transport. And I think this is the juncture in my presentation that I want to sort of delve a bit deeper into this theme. So from the surveys that we have done with young people and the interaction with communities up and down the region, so reliable, timely and affordable transport connections are critical in creating the conditions for a competitive region, which Highlands and Islands wants to be. This is a very distinctive challenge for the Highlands and Islands because, as you see from our geography, you don't pass through the Highlands and Islands to get somewhere. It's right on the periphery. It's not on the road to anywhere. So this is a critical issue for our future development. And we, High, have worked very hard to influence partners to invest in transport infrastructure. For example, we are very keen to attract airlines to invest in new routes into the Highlands and Islands to maintain and expand that global connections. But we also work with colleagues in the Scottish Government to influence and support enhanced and more affordable transport connectivity. High was totally supportive of the Scottish Government's move to raise the ADS discount from 40 to 50% in January 2016. I think this is key in bringing young people into the region. Okay, so the air discount scheme. Just say I'm a proud member. You can see my card here. I've got a little 01 there. You won't be able to see this, but that's my daughter. She's a little 1 on my card. So this we get this card every 4 years when they renew the scheme. So just because I know that Michael Bratcher from the Scottish Government is not here today, so I'm just going to run through what the scheme is. I'm sure most of you will actually know. So the air discount scheme reduces the cost of air travel for those whose permanent or main residence is in an eligible area of the Highlands and Islands. Now, the eligible areas in this map are in orange. Okay, so if you live in these areas, obviously Shetland's up the top there, then you are eligible to apply for an air discount scheme card. What it does is it provides a discount of 50%, it used to be 40, now it's increased to 50% on the core airfare. That's the total airfare, the total fare excluding airport charges and government taxes on non-public service obligation air routes. The ADS was introduced in May 2006 for the following eligible areas. So we've got Caithness and North West Sutherland, which is on the mainland there, it's the bit that's got the right angle there. We've got Islay and Jura down on the left there, down the southwest there. You've got Orkney, which is in between the mainland and Shetland. You've got the Outer Hebrides, which is the Western Isles on the left there. And of course you've got Shetland. And Colonsay, which is also on the south west here, was also added to the scheme in 2011. In April 2011, there was a change to the scheme. Well, it wasn't actually a change. What happened in the early days of the scheme, it wasn't probably been audited correctly, and people that were undertaking business trips were using the scheme. But this was actually tightened up in 2011. So it was, it's more closely audited now. So if you're undertaking business trips, both in the public and the private sector, it's not eligible. But it was decided that the ADS would be available for business trips made by those working in the third sector or the voluntary sector or the social enterprise or community sector, because these organisations, sometimes their funds are quite limited, but they, like other businesses, need to network, need to participate in training and so on. So it's really important that our more fragile and businesses and community businesses and social enterprises and the outlying areas get to access the air discount scheme. In terms of airlines in the area, they need to opt into the scheme. They have to say that they want to join it. I think it would be a complete no-brainer for them not to do that. And they need to sign up a memorandum of understanding with the Scottish Government. They also need to provide regular accounts to the Scottish Government to show what they're spending, and so they get reimbursed. And also, they will need to provide regular facts and figures about who's using the scheme. So what I'm going to do now, I was just going to say as well, where you can fly to, basically, if you live in the orange areas, you can get half-price fares to Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen, Inverness, Manchester, which is in north of England, and Bergen in Norway. So it's not just within Scotland. And also between any of the airports covered, which the 6 airports up there, the Sombra in Shetland, Kirkwall in Orkney, Wick and Caithness in Sutherland, Stornoway in the Western Isles, Benbecula in the Western Isles, and the 3 small airports, Islay, Jura and Colonsay and Argyll and Bute. And the scheme, as I said, was introduced in 2006 under the European Commission's Aid of Social Character, which promotes social cohesion of populations in very remote and isolated areas. But now the scheme uses the general block exemption and de minimis state aid schemes. For those of you that are state aid nerds, you'll be lapping this up. But basically, I think the point is that in terms of European state aid, there are plenty of options available. Okay, so I'm now going to go and speak about some of the facts and figures around the ADS. So this is the annual expenditure by the Scottish Government on the ADS scheme from 2006-07 to last year. There's a red column in there, 2011-12, and there was a big dip. There was a certain volcanic ash cloud that happened, which really impacted on us flying about. I better not say any more. I'll not be welcome here much longer. But anyway, so but as you can see, and also what happened in 2011-12, there was clarification on what if you were eligible or not if you're a business user, because there was a bit of confusion up till then. So as you can see, I was trying to work this out. So we're probably up to this year about £8.5 million to fund the ADS scheme, which is a tiny proportion of the total Scottish Government budget of £33.18 billion. So it's a very small proportion. So it's basically, with 72,000 users, it's about £118 per head, which I think in Icelandic krona is 16,500 krona per head annually. As you can see, since 2011-12, the figure has grown from 33 to, So the main driver for the increase in ADS costs is the rise in payment per flight made by using ADS. And since 2011-12, this has grown from 33 to £40. This is an increase of around 22% compared to only 13% growth in the number of flights made. Just be aware of that. This market doesn't usually operate in the way other markets operate. I think that's the only lesson we can take from that. And again, that pattern is kind of followed here. Again, there's that dip in 2010-11 in the number of one-way flights supported through ADS. But for 72,000 members and 160 odd thousand trips being made, you're looking at most people using that for one and a bit return journeys a year. Now this is the trends in the core fare return on ADS supported flights. So it's been possible to calculate the average core fare being paid by ADS passengers before the discount is applied. And again, the core fare is not the total gross fare that includes airport charges and government taxes. The core fare rose to an average of £173 in 2007-08, and obviously it fell back in 2010-11, and it fell slightly again in 2011-12. But it has since increased annually since then, reaching £200 in 2015-16. Between 2007 and 8 to 2015 and 16, the core return fare increased by £49, that's 32% that I mentioned earlier. That is above the rate which is of the Consumer Price Inflation Index, which is at 23%. And that's the UK CPI. So again, the flight costs are running higher, are increasing faster than the Consumer Price Inflation Index. Since 2011-12, the core return fare has increased by £35. That's an increase of 22%, much higher than the increase in the CPI. That's 8% in the same period. This increase in the average core fare may not only reflect general airfare inflation, it could also be due to a change in the in the mix of ticket types. You've got greater use of flexible tickets, and also higher rates of passenger growth on routes where fares are higher than the average across all eligible routes, notably longer distances routes in the market, in the network. And I think just for information, I was still looking at this because I think kilometres, probably the shortest route is between Sombra and Kirkwall, which is 235 kilometres, and the longest route would be Sombra to Manchester, which is 957 kilometres. So I don't know how that gauges with your particular routes in Iceland. So I've given you a lot of stats there, and I mean I will be giving Anna-Leah and the group that's invited me up here lots of this information and more information if required. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move on to the sort of people element of all this, because that's what we're ultimately doing it for. What I want to speak about is how the ADS has impacted on the ordinary lives of people living in these remote areas. So this was a survey done back in 2008, but because that's the most recent survey we have, unfortunately. But I suspect that this is still very much the case. As you can see from this statistics here, most people travel because they're visiting friends and family. Is that social aspect, or they're accessing leisure, or they're going to go on holiday. It's the first step on going on holiday out of Shetland, or out of the Highlands and Islands. Another important factor is accessing shopping and retail. Very important. Again, the others, hospitals and medical institutions, accompanying partners and children to hospital is important too, and education, and other things like funerals and weddings and so on. So it just kind of illustrates the very human element to ADS, why people are using the ADS scheme. And I think what it does is it's very difficult to say, well, what's the economic impact of all this? Well, it's not all about economics, it's about social impact as well. And I think what you've got to think about, people that live in very remote areas, if they've got the opportunity to travel, see friends and family, participate in leisure and tourism activities, go shopping, it provides a feel-good factor. It promotes confidence in an area. And you can't really put a price on confidence. It's just a really important thing to have. So here we go. So what we found over the last 11 years of the air discount scheme is there's been a growth in passenger numbers on all routes. In the first year of operation, passenger numbers grew by 12%, and over the whole period of 2006 to 16, it's grown by 10% overall. And ADS flights account for about a third of all passengers on all eligible routes. And the largest proportion of flights booked through ADS were to and from the Western Isles, Shetland Isles and Orkney, because these are the most further away. This additionality figure is quite old, but I suspect it's higher than that. It's probably around 17-18%, that 13% of flights would not have taken place at all without ADS. But what is also important to see is that the mode of transport has changed significantly. I mean, obviously, if you live in the Shetland, Orkney, the Western Isles, you can get on a boat. It takes 24 hours from Shetland to Aberdeen, but if you want to take your car, that's the only option. But again, 34% they would have undertaken the trip by other transport means without the ADS. So people are switching from longer forms of transport. And obviously in Iceland, that would be from ferries or just on the road to using air transport. And also the survey showed us that affordability is also up. Travel budgets have stayed the same or reduced. 46% of people reported the annual travel budgets have reduced by £100 by using the ADS scheme. But I think more importantly, is that 60% of all ADS users say that they want to take more trips, and they feel that they're able to take more trips because of the reduced cost. Another interesting economic impact that's happened over the last 10 years is that flight capacity on eligible routes has increased by 20%. And from, interestingly, on the 1st of September this year, for the first time ever, we have 2 different airline companies going head to head on some of the routes, which is bringing a lot of price elasticity or whatever into the whole mix here, because they're competing against each other. So that the market is operating. Both airlines are members of the ADS scheme. So, but for a consumer's point of view, what you're able to do is shop around now. It used to be one airline, Flybe, that was operating flights from in these remote and rural areas. Now you've got Flybe and you've got Loganair. So again, lots more options to reduce the costs. Now, if you speak to the airlines, they'll say, well, we've increased our capacity because that was our business strategy. But I think that it would be it's pretty reasonable to surmise that without the ADS scheme, you would not have seen this increase in capacity, because more people are flying because of the ADS scheme. And finally, 70% of ADS users across all regions strongly agree with the statement that the ADS has had a positive impact on improving access to important services. So again, getting back to that feel-good factor, people feel that that their lives have improved through the introduction of the ADS. Just a bit of a spider diagram there, just to show the different areas and how people perceive that it's had a good impact on accessing important services. And you see Islay and Jura down there, which are the most remote and very small islands, small populations. They've seen a huge difference to their lives in terms of since the ADS has been introduced. And also, I think this is one of the most important slides, but the percentage of people agreeing that ADS has had a significant impact on making their communities a better place to live. And that's really what it's all about, because if we can't help retain people in their remote communities, then then businesses, the economy, and the entire community will suffer. The knowledge that getting out of the community to access services, shopping, meet family and friends, it's not going to be a financial burden, is really important. So it's really important for the whole economy that the ADS scheme is in operation. Okay, so I'm going to come to my conclusions now. I think you can see from the statistics there that the air discount scheme has had a significant impact on the lives of ordinary people living in the most remote and peripheral areas in the Highlands and Islands of Scotland. All forms of connectivity are particularly important to attracting and retaining young people. And young people, whatever economy you are in, wherever you are in the world, are the future lifeblood of your economy. So focusing on the needs of young people and communities in remote areas is very vital. But I also caveat that by saying that reducing transport costs and improving connectivity is only part of the solution. It's a very important part of the solution. But we've also, as that young people survey said, you need good jobs, you need career progression, you need housing and so on. But if communities decline to a certain level that they're not sustainable, it's difficult to provide jobs and housing if people are leaving communities. So there needs to be a holistic package of measures. And certainly Highland and Island Enterprise, we will continue to work with partners and government across the region to address these many issues. TAC, is that? Yes. And just to say, I'm happy for you to email me, and there's the websites for you.